Last week, we spoke to educational consultant Fiona McKenzie of Gabbitas UAE about what university would be like in the 21st century. We talked about how universities would take an interdisciplinary approach, optimize student learning, and finally collaborate with companies to equip students with the relevant skill sets required for their careers. Today, we continue this conversation with Fiona and discuss some more important buzzwords in a 21st century university landscape. There are two buzzwords we hear all the time now when we talk about education: entrepreneurship and innovation. Will schools start teaching this, or will children go to university, or will they run businesses alongside?
I think there's a big debate about whether you can teach entrepreneurship and innovation, particularly entrepreneurship. Is that something that's inherent in somebody, or is it something you can actually sort of teach? I think it's really interesting to look at some of the kind of best-known entrepreneurs, people like Richard Branson, for example, who flunked out of school, actually dyslexic, which is another interesting thing. A lot of very, very creative businessmen actually are dyslexic. Weirdly, there's a lot of research about that. But I think actually, you know, that entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily come from an academic place. Can education foster those skills in children? Yes, I think it can. Because what are we looking at? We're thinking about things like problem-solving skills, resilience, I think, is a key one. And I'm not sure that schools are always very good at teaching resilience, because we're so focused on success that we sometimes forget that actually, you know, Einstein didn't get it right first time. He had to do lots and lots and lots of experiments until he got it. We would term those experiments that didn't go right failure. Actually, it's not. It's a work in progress, because you're not worried about it going wrong, because you know that you can get back up, dust yourself down and crack on with another go.
When we were growing up, competition meant being at the top of the class, being number one. But now there's all this talk about collaborative learning. So if a child at the age of 18 can be recruited by a company like Ernst & Young, isn't the world so much more competitive now than it was when we were growing up?
I think that, yes, that the collaboration is really important, because that's going to be a lifelong skill that's going to go through. But that's not saying that it's not going to be competitive to get these jobs. And it's going to get more and more competitive, because if you think about it, with the rise of AI, a lot of those jobs that we've taken for granted are going to disappear. In fact, there's a study that Oxford University have published that says that within the next 2 decades, 47% of the jobs that we currently have will have disappeared. Now, there's another survey that's come out that says, yes, but don't worry, there will be another kind of, 21 million jobs that will have come along to replace those. But at the moment, we don't know what those jobs are going to be. So it's about kind of preparing our children for a very uncertain future. But I think, going back to your point about competition, I think what's really interesting about working in international education is the kids I see out here who are trilingual. They're doing IB maybe, and they're scoring way above the global average, and they're doing this in their third language. If I'm IBM and I'm employing somebody, who am I going to pick? Am I going to pick the kid that's trilingual, who's culturally sensitive, who's obviously strongly academic, or am I going to pick the kid who's never left their country and is monolingual? I think, what people have to understand is that the competition is global these days. You know, that students are competing, potential employees are competing against a global talent pool, which is exciting, but also terrifying, and people have really got to wake up and kind of recognise that. I think the other thing about this kind of competition, Ernst & Young, for example, is a good example. I was talking to somebody at PwC the other day, and they were saying, Fiona, what we like to do is we want to recruit people whose values align with our company values, because we can teach them the skills. We can't teach them the values. And they're looking for people who are, intellectually agile, who are curious, who want to learn, and are adaptable and flexible to a kind of new way of being in when they move into employment. So yes, it is competitive, but it's not, again, always about being kind of top of the maths set competitive. Right. It's about presenting with a competitive skill set. And a lot of that, I think, comes from work experience opportunities too. And I really advocate parents to try and encourage their children to take as many work experience opportunities as they can, so they have an idea of what that looks like, what a company's values are, how they fit into that bigger world, how their education fits into that bigger piece.
Would you advocate work experience even earlier on now?
A lot of schools have programs in place where they do work experience in year 10, and that's a kind of good starting point. It will be work shadowing, you know, it's going to be following somebody around. It will involve making coffee and doing some photocopying, and you know what? That's not a bad thing, because I think sometimes when you leave university, you kind of think you're going to go into the top job. It's not like that out there. You know, there's a bit of a reality check at that point. And obviously you then build up to more practical experiences where lots of big companies now offer internships. And in fact, those internships, which would be traditionally in your kind of second or third university break, are very much filtering systems for who they then go on to employ.
We've learned so much about what companies will look for in their future candidates. As Fiona said, competition is now global. So what can we as parents do to prepare our children for 21st century success in this globally competitive environment? Find out what Fiona has to say in our concluding video on universities in the 21st century next week. I hope you enjoyed watching this show. I hope the episode was interesting. I hope you comment. I hope you like it. I hope you subscribe. If there's anything more you want me to talk about, any future topics that you want mentioned, please don't hesitate to comment again. And thank you for watching, and see you next week. Bye!